They say business is an incredibly lonely endeavor.
The type who are high profile end up in a position where they have to show a great deal of caution to the personal relationships they enter into, because there's a small sliver of humanity who will smell them out and think, wow, that's a great way for me to make money, and I'll get alongside them and that sort of stuff. And there's a lot to be said for having a group around you that you actually trust and like, right?
You come home, you want to celebrate with your partner, but they don't truly understand what it's like.
One of my favourite quotes is raw monkeys with clothes, right? So, you know, million years on the savannah, we've had 10,000 years since we started agriculture. We've been in this crazy sprint for 200 years of building a modern economy. But actually, at the end, we're all humans, and, you know, something really valuable to do and good solid connections are a good part of actually having a really good life.
You have pain, you have challenges, you want to go to them for support, to your family, to your friends. They don't have the solution.
I always start with, do you really want to do this? You know, because everyone talks about the beach, the batch, and the BMW. That's actually not aligned with growing a business. That actually happens in your late 40s and 50s.
So this is a podcast about connecting the humanity of business and surrounding yourself with people that understand. Maybe we'll just jump into that. I think there's something value around brotherhood. Like,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because a lot of people, as they start getting older, they start struggling to find time for each other and almost get lonely. Like their work becomes their fulfillment, but then the work, you know, eventually ends. Do you think about that? Like how to maintain friendships through adulthood?
Yeah, look, my view on friendships, and I'm really lucky. I've got great mates, and I work in an environment where I meet a lot of really good people, so that's quite cool. But I think the golden rule is you've got to carve time. So a really good example is the two guys I met right at the start of when I went to Otago University. We've been very close friends ever since. And for the last 15 years, we go away skiing for 4 days in August. We book it in February. We know when we're going, and we just get to spend time together. Turn the phones off, chat, and stay in touch. And by dedicating that time to it, we know that relationship's going to carry through. And so I encourage people to consider their close relationships as another investment in business, because you simply can't do business without support. And while these two guys do quite different things, one's a partner in a major accounting firm, the other's a specialist advisory board member, we can still chat about what's going on at work, we can chat about what's going on with the family, and we can just be boys and talk about sport. Politics, which I stay off in.
Oh, do you?
I stay
away?
off politics and podcasts, and I stay off politics in my community.
Smart man, yeah. Me, not so much. Oh, yeah. I sort of approach life as like, you know, people talk about fuck you money. I talk about like a fuck you attitude. Not like putting yourself above people or talking down to them in any way. Just like, you know, at some point, even if you have all the money in the world, there's going to be something that's beyond your control. And you need to have your mind in order to enable you to navigate that.
I agree with all of that, and there's an and. I've met a few very high net worth individuals, and particularly the type who are high profile end up in a position where they have to show a great deal of caution to the personal relationships they enter into, because there's a small sliver of humanity who will smell them out and think, wow, that's a great way for me to make money, and I'll get alongside them and that sort of stuff. And there's a lot to be said for having a group around you that you actually trust and like, right? And particularly in business ownership, it's very popular to say in business ownership that it's lonely and those sort of things. I'm not sure it's lonely, but you are in some respects isolated, because when you go home, you know, your partner may not be that interested, or there's lots of other stuff going on, you know, especially when you've got kids. And so you've got to have somewhere you can go, especially as a bloke, where you can decompress, have a chat, sometimes just have a bit of fun and not talk about it. And that's, one of my favourite quotes is raw monkeys with clothes, right? So, you know, million years on the savannah, we've had 10,000 years since we started agriculture. We've been in this crazy sprint for 200 years of building a modern economy. But actually, at the end, we're all humans, and, you know, something really valuable to do and good solid connections are a good part of actually having a really good life.
Yeah, I think there's something like there was a period of time where I was just sad, and I didn't know why. It was a while ago, and I wasn't seeing sunlight or people.
Yeah,
I was just waking up early, coming home late, and I was just like,
yeah,
And then you think about, like, it doesn't matter what business you own, there's some component of relationship.
Yeah. Look, there is the and piece is, we've only been playing seriously in this digital market since 2007. And really only for the last 15 years, because it took 2 or 3 years from the invention of the iPhone for people to really start, for that commerce to start happening. And so that's when more and more people did more and more remote selling, remote marketing, remote connection. And people just got out of the habit of it, I like to say 3 times a week, Ryan, but it's probably more like twice a week. I go to the Olympic pool in Newmarket, have a swim.
Oh, yeah, it goes
then
well.
We finish up, and there's the same old guys and girls who've been doing it for the last 15 years, and we have a coffee and we have a laugh, and they're from all sorts of different backgrounds. One of them professionally writes menus for a living. Another lady is an orthopedic surgeon. A very handy network if you need things fixed, or a recipe. But that's that connection at the start of the day after a bit of exercise just sets you up, and then you're away, So building those routines, and even going to the same cafe and learning the barista's name makes a big difference for the barista and for you, because you've got that personal connection.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how much value just giving someone your undivided attention gives, and how rare it is to actually just listen and not try to think of how you'll benefit or what's going to come next or how it impacts you, and actually listen. It's hard. I do it maybe for 10% of the time, but I'm getting better.
Well, back to your meditation and mindfulness course, young man.
Yes, I did that, the silent retreat. Well, on that business side of things, because I see the extremes of these business owners that get hurt and they are afraid to relinquish control, even though it's even more stressful than being hurt. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that one-man band that gets caught up at a certain point. What is sort of your advice on people that have resistance to delegation?
Well, there's 2 quite different things there, right? So the first is getting hurt. So, years ago in psychology, I studied it in marketing, 4 decades ago, called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the bottom line is you need shelter and food, and then it goes out, right? So what happens in businesses is the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy needs is cash flow. And if you haven't got cash flow, the walls just narrow around you. And that makes it really hard to see other stuff. So that's quite a distinct problem. It's a very common problem at the moment, particularly because you've got the double pressure of, you may be part of the market that's being affected by, the recession we are having. And the other part for a lot of the younger people is that their mortgages have gone up, right? So they've got this huge pressure on, I need to take money out of my business to pay my mortgage, but I don't have any money in my business to pay my mortgage. And so that pressure's really significant. And when you've got that, you've got to go and have a chat to somebody. It might be your accountant, it might be another mate. You've got to figure that piece out, because you can't come up until you've got rid of that stress. And I always joke that, business owners either live 10 years longer or 10 years less than other people.
Yeah.
And you'll live 10 years less if you live in that stress space. And I know I've been there twice, and particularly my second time was during COVID. That killed 2 of my businesses. One was an events business and the other was an advisory business that worked in hospitality. And, that's an incredibly difficult, incredibly stressful time. You're sitting there and it's the 29th of the month and your wife's going, so can we pay the mortgage this month? So that's a really tough place to be. So, just go and find someone to get some help. And don't be by yourself, because it's a shit place to be. The other one, they're learning to delegate. That's a whole different style of thing, right? And that's really... I think the starting point from that is you actually got to ask yourself a question. And that question is, do I really want to grow a business? So, years ago, when I was doing a lot of property, which got killed off in the last GFC, it was the other time I had cash flow problem. We had this great Sparky, and he said to me, look, Ben, it's really simple in my business. I have 1 van, I make a lot of money. I have 2 vans, and I can run 1 van, I have someone else. Then I have to go to 4 vans, I have to get a part-time administrator, and I have to buy a ute, which means I now need 4 working Sparkies. Then I've got to go to 8, because at 8 I have to get a foreman, because I'm busy selling and I need 2 administrators. Then I got to go to 12 because that's a magic number where he gets to bring another foreman in or another senior in, and then you have to go to 20. And each time you fall in between those numbers, you actually make less than the man in the van. So for a lot of businesses, there's sweet spots. So the question you get to ask is, do I want to have people working for me? And if I do, how many? So that's the first piece. The second piece is back to monkeys and clothes. And humans as a group, 12 to 14 people is a natural size of a group that a working leader can work in. I think the Romans and the Greeks figured that out in their military. And if you go into any modern Western military, you get a non-commissioned officer and 12 to 14 people. And that's the magic number, 12 to 14, right? So you can sort of get to that level, but after that, complications start. So I'm sure you've talked to a bunch of people who got up to 20 staff. They bounce off the brick wall and they say, it's just too hard, right? All the wheels fall off. And everyone say it's all about delegation. It's something different. So typically, if you grow up to that 10 or 12, you can sort of do it organically, When you go past that 10 to 15, hitting up towards 20, you have to start getting deliberate. And the best people to talk about this to in the market is Brian Keegan and his team at Sprout. And they've really figured this out because at that point you've got two things going on. One is you actually have to start bringing on leaders that are suitable for the next level. And the second is you have to start preparing yourself as an owner for a slightly different role. And if you hold on to I can run everything because there's only 12 of us, and I've been there, it's a really good number, by the way. It's pretty easy. You just poke your head out of the office back in the old days when we had them, and hey, how's everyone? Yeah, that's cool. And you want to get the morale up, so you go, hey, everyone, I'm taking out for pizza at lunch on Friday, and you just do it, and it's easy. But when you get up to 20, you get more deliberate. And so you've got those two pieces, preparing yourself and getting really deliberate about bringing in that layer of management. And then that happens again. And then it happens again. There's a series of brick walls during what I call the emerging growth stages. And so I always start with, do you really want to do this? Because everyone talks about the beach, the batch, and the BMW. That's actually not aligned with growing a business. That actually happens in your late 40s and 50s. And the beach, the batch, and the BMW is usually has the fourth B. You know what that is, eh? Bored.
Okay, yeah.
They've got this beautiful business. They're making plenty of money. They're out of puff. They don't really want to go and expand into the US. They're actually, everything's sweet, but actually, I just got lots of time on my hand and no one to play with because everyone else is working. So making a deliberate choice isn't that. And most of the people who criticize people who make a choice about the size of their businesses work for other people. I've never yet met a business owner turn around and go, I can't believe you're only running a business that size. Why haven't you grown it? Because business owners get that it's hard, right? So back to the point. You got to make that choice. You got to decide whether that's what you're in for. Go and have a chat to someone like Brian at Sprout or Sam at Harrowfield or any of those people who understand what's coming. Have a chat to your mates who've done it before, and just be really conscious that that's what you want to do.
I wonder what you think of they say the same mind that caused the problem isn't the mind that can solve it. I'm wondering, like when you want to go to that next level. And you want to attract A players, you want to attract a type of person, but you're not quite that person to be able to attract that type of person.
Yeah.
Is there a process for working through that, or is there you just hire and just wing it, or how do you attract someone that's at another level that you haven't reached?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I think that depends. So say you're doing something really cool. Like Stanley Henry at Attention Seekers, a well-known chap. When I met Stan, he's just off the plane from Melbourne, and he had a good idea. And Stan's done incredibly well.
Yeah.
But he created a business that was really interesting to people. And he's now got two quite senior people in his office, in his group, who've come into the business because they're excited about it, and they're the perfect people for the business, right? Because Stan's a huge believer in helping develop people, but you can't develop people as fast as you need up to that leadership level. So having a business that's kind of interesting and going places is really interesting. The other one is, there's actually another part to that, which is businesses sometimes outgrow their staff as well. And, I always call it, sort of honouring their departure, because what happens is they join a business and there's 6 of you and it's got a little bit of a buzz and everyone's having some fun. And then you get up to 20 people and you're having to put in far more formalised structures. And then you get up to, say, 30 to 50 people and you're starting to feel a little bit like a corporate. You've got to have policies for things and processes for things because you can't scale past 12 people without all that stuff. And so some people just go, it's not what I joined. They'll start self-sabotaging. They'll be unhappy, but they won't acknowledge it. And so a big part of it is helping those people move on, because when you do that, you create the space for the people that would be better for you in that next phase, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so, when you're in that growing from 1 to 12, that's often the space of developing people through. But if you decide you're going to go, I want to get to 50, and you want to do that in a period of time, say 4 or 5 years, you have to hire your leadership at those levels. You have to hire people who have skills, because you're moving too quickly to be able to develop people into position. So it's selling the story. Coming back to your original question, which was how do you attract those people? It's selling the story of come on the growth journey with me.
Yeah. I used to say something that's quite naive in hindsight. Was I thought, you hire someone from the outside to develop the people so that people have hope to move up the organization. I understood that from a motivational standpoint. I didn't understand that from a skill deficit, in the sense that you need someone that actually knows what that level of the business is. There might be pros and cons of each, because I struggle with that. Is like, we've worked really hard, we're building our way up, we've got good rapport with the people, and that's leadership. Why wouldn't you just encourage that, so the person that you already has that rapport will stay in the organization? Do you think there's pros and cons of either, or is it?
Well, it's a deliberate choice. So first of all, what's your pace? Because if you're growing really quick, you will probably outgrow the pace of them to get there.
Yeah. Okay.
The second thing is, for people who've worked in larger organisations, they'll know this. Every time they get a promotion, when they're sitting there waiting to get the promotion and they think they're ready, they think they know what's in the job. But when they get to the job, they realise all the stuff they didn't know was there. That's the same when you're growing a business, because you've got to remember a 12-person business really is flat with one person up there. You might have a little bit of pseudo-hierarchy. So you've got a lot of people who don't know how to lead people. You've got a lot of people who haven't developed processes and systems. You've got a lot of people who have a lot to learn. And so you might have confidence that, Ryan's a smart young guy, he can do it, but I haven't got 3 years to develop Ryan, because by the time I get to Ryan up to the space I need him, we're actually going to be over here. So those are the sort of questions you get to ask yourself. My observation is the youngsters of the world will move around and get those opportunities, or they'll get it internally. Good people always find a home, especially now because there's just none out there, right? So you got to understand, I guess, what you're trying to achieve for the business, and just be brutally honest with yourself as a business owner. This is the pace I need to go. Ryan's a great guy, but I just don't think I can develop in time. Or I'm going to throw some resource at Ryan. I'm going to get him a whole lot of development on him, and I'm going to watch and see if he can make it there. But I do understand that Ryan's going to be stepping into a space where he doesn't know a lot of stuff. That's just the way it is.
It seems to be this dance that I see with business owners and myself, this balance between doing what you should, the capacity of you to navigate the chores you don't want to do, as well as to have the conversations you don't want to have.
Yeah.
And then blaming others for your inadequacies. You know what I mean? So do you ever have any advice for business owners that need to have that kind candor?
Well, starting point, look in a mirror.
Yeah.
And and don't look at what your hair looks like. Just look in a mirror and go, there's another human. And humans make mistakes. And human nature hasn't changed over the millennia. We're just the environment we live in. So we're going to make mistakes. We're going to have those challenges. We're going to have self-doubt. We're going to have all that sort of stuff. Just got to accept you got it. I don't think there's any way to navigate that without introspection, without finding your personal way of understanding what your self-talk is and creating a space and slowing the voice down in your head and getting intentional and all those sort of things. And generally that's actually about slowing yourself down to see clearly rather than running faster. I mean, there's times in business you do run faster, but if you've got that going on, you just got to find the space and the time, and then find whatever the method is for you to get that clarity, right? So, I use mindfulness, I use exercise. I've got friends who use religion, Christianity, and Buddhism, actually. Not the same people, obviously. There's all sorts of ways you can go, because, navigating human life is actually quite complex, and that voice in your head does get in the way, right? So,
Well, I think, I've been talking to the old business owner where they were saying, can't I just have it easy? And I'm like, well, I'm afraid you were born a human. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't. It's whether you willingly suffer or you have suffering happen to you.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're slipping into the Stoics at that point.
Yeah, what's your philosophy on life then? Well, it's a bit deep.
All life is suffering, right? I think I forget my various Stoic philosophers. I'm more of a storyteller than a detail guy.
Yeah, okay.
One of the things I find hilarious is that I don't think there's anything that wasn't covered by the philosophers 2,500 years ago that is a surprise to any of us now. Nothing's changed in that respect, right? So, it's... you're going to have that, and you're particularly going to have it if you're in business.
Yeah, on that, like, not changing, Socrates was bitching about the kids saying, they don't know the value of hard work, blah, blah, blah. It hasn't changed. It's always some generation talking down to the other.
Yeah.
So what has been, I'm a big believer in mindfulness and meditation, and I very rarely have had a moment of stress that I didn't cause. I have a moment of pain that's outside of my control, but I consciously choose to be stressed, if that makes sense. So it's like, bad thing happens. I interpret bad thing even though bad thing's no longer happening.
Yeah.
Snowballs, now I'm stressed.
Yeah.
What do you, it's a bit deep, but like, what do you do in your mind to not get swept up in the pain and into the stress and using mindfulness? How does mindfulness help your life?
Yeah. I think I was 6 or 7 when I got diagnosed with dyslexia. And that was due to my older brother got diagnosed. So then they looked at the other 2 brothers and both of us had dyslexia. So I'm bringing this up to get to a point here, which is, we in connected communities, which is the business communities I run, we joke that half the business owners have dyslexia and the other half have ADHD. It's probably not a joke. So there's a bunch of superpowers that come with that. Pattern recognition, strong empathy, which is really important in sales, of course, an ability to connect dots that other people don't have. There's often business owners feel that they just see the world slightly different to everyone else. And in fact, I consider business ownership, we consider it a positive choice, but it's actually partly because you're going to be shit in corporate, right? So when if it's business owners listen to this and they've got a little bit of dose of that going on, firstly, you just got to acknowledge you've got it, right? It is a superpower, but it means that you're firing off a lot faster. My daughter's got ADHD, as has my brother, and so there's a bit of a raging conversation because it's genetic, or largely genetic, about whether Bella got it from my wife or from me. But you can see the superpowers in it. But with it comes a few challenges. So what I do is probably not what most people can do. Is one of the recreations I have is free diving, spearfishing, breath hold. Although to be fair, more often than not, I just look at the fish and don't shoot them, because when I'm doing that or I'm skiing, it's when you're doing that, you can't think about anything else. So I've created these things I do these things where I can't think about anything else, and that allows me the space. So even, if I'm really wound up, I go to the pool, I'll just do a free diving breath session and just do, 25 and 50 meter underwater stints for, 45 minutes, and then it just clears my head. So I'm not saying do that. What I am saying is you got to figure it out for yourself, but be open to figuring it out for yourself. Most people know what they can do where they get into a sense of flow, or they can, whatever it happens to be. It's not social media though.
You don't get flow on TikTok? Free diving, there's some lessons in free diving. Like I like holding my breath. I wouldn't go as far as say free diver, but I like slowing down my heart rate and then moving in a consistent flow underwater.
Yeah.
In actual fact, going slower enables you to go further.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is interesting in life. It's like you think you can cut corners, you think you can avoid the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you said something there about a business in the connection space. And I've been thinking a lot about like environments and creating spaces where genuine connections can thrive, because that's what life is about. So what thought have you put in terms of archetyping an environment, whether it's the selection of people that come in, whether it's the space that you guys meet?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, look, we've been really deliberate about it. I had a previous business that was like that got, because essentially building business communities in the model I have where people pay a subscription to participate is essentially the delivery is an events business. The business isn't an events business, but the delivery is an events business. So, shutting Auckland for 2 years is not very good for the business model. But it did give us a little bit of space to rethink about it. So I've got really deliberate about a few things. So the first is the belief set. So firstly, business is important to the prosperity of society. It's jobs, it's products, it's supporting suppliers, it's that sort of stuff. And most people who own businesses, because I make a distinction between business and corporate. So business privately held tends to be small, emerging, or mid. They're actively involved in their communities, right? So fundamental to the prosperity of society. Second thing was that it's emerging growth companies that are going to drive the future of New Zealand's prosperity outside of agri, of course. And what I mean by emerging is that one of my pet hates. There's a couple of them. Pine trees is one, funnily enough. That's
pine
irrational.
Trees destroys the fauna, doesn't it? Poisons it.
No, I'm just happy. I'm just happy to be irrational on pine trees. That's another story. Let's not but I hate SME because it doesn't tell you the story, and so the second piece we're really deliberate about after acknowledging prosperity is that in small there's three sorts of businesses in small, right? There's a naturally small. So there's a natural size to a lot of businesses, particularly in the retail services space. Then you've got the deliberate small. And those are people who could have a business that could get quite big, but they've made a decision to be a certain size. And if you want to know who they are, go to a boat ramp in summer, right? So-and-so builder, so-and-so Sparky, so-and-so, roofer. These people have figured out a way to run a business that gives them the life they want to have. And frankly, good on them. And then the last is the smaller ones who are still trying to figure it out. They haven't got past 10 people. They're iterating. And I've got mates who iterated for 8 years who are now doing 50, 60 million turnover, but it took that long before they got the lift off, right? So they're the ambitious, but they haven't figured it out yet. At the other end, you got what I call mid. And in my mind, mid is I've developed an executive team. So I've got myself and I've got 3 or 4 at least execs, and we're running a team. And so typically you might sit around 50, but it's sort of that 50 to 75. You start becoming a genuine mid-market business. You've figured a lot of stuff out. You're having to manage that, having a repetitive thing you can do at scale with not too much rigidity. And what happens then is the CEO actually turns internal. So in the meantime, in that space in between, they're out there leading, but they actually turn back, and it's their exec team who are doing a lot of the driving and operating of the business. So I got really focused on and really interested in how do you help someone go from 10 to 75 staff. And so we call it emerging. So we talk about seams, small, emerging, and mid-market, and we play in the emerging. And the reason for that, we've touched on it a little bit already, is there's a series of things you've got to figure out. So one is you've got to understand your stages. You hit your 20 and you bounce off, so how do you get through that stage and the next stage and the next stage to get to a full exec team? And one is you've got to figure out what sort of resourcing and support you put in once you go past 20. Do you put an advisory board member in? Do you bring in a decent coach? Do you start using a handful of specialist suppliers, that sort of stuff? And then the other piece is you've got to figure out what makes you so unique that you can actually drive the growth of your business, right? So if you're out there and you're doing the same thing as 5 or 10 or 15 other people, you're just in a competitive arms race. So when you look at the businesses that have got to scale quickly, they've figured out a very specific niche in their own language that they can replicate and go really fast on. So Fingermark did it with kiosks and quick service restaurants, and then technology and security cameras and stuff in quick service restaurants. Supercolour figured it out and how to do digital printing, which was of an equal quality as screen printing. Macroafter figured out how to create a platform for people who sold programs online for health and sport. And all of them have got to a place where they're either number one or number two in the world. And so those are called hidden champions. There's a book called Hidden Champions that actually summarises all of this. Germany's the world famous for doing it. So that's the piece you got to get in. So I got really interested in that. How do we help people on that emerging growth space? So we got really clear about who fitted as an owner. And then the last piece we got really clear on, very long answer, isn't it? Last piece,
I'm still with you.
Yeah, last piece I got really clear on was another of my pet hates is you get an expert company that does big firms and say, oh, we come down and we help the smaller people. Well, that's just bullshit because they don't get it, right? They don't play there. They don't understand the challenges of the business. They might be able to provide a little bit of marketing advice or something, but largely they don't get it. And so it became really clear to me that one of the ways I could really help drive prosperity in New Zealand was to actually build communities of experts that support emerging growth companies. Find them, bring them together as a community. So our communities are double-sided. We've got the owners and we've got the experts that can help them. And then we deliberately create an environment we call no sales, unashamedly commercial. So the idea is that, I always say that, networking's for corporates. Most business owners hate going into a room full of strangers. Most of them have a long history of trying that and getting no benefit out of it. So we've created a relational environment where people come in regularly every month, and through that they build relationships with a whole bunch of business owners and a whole bunch of experts. And when they're ready, they'll collaborate with them. And typically after a year, people are collaborating with 3 or 4 people in the room. So that's where we've got deliberate. So just touching a little bit on the services space, we talk about the shift from what we call the factory operating model to the smartphone operating model. So, back in the day when I was, 38 years ago when I was starting university, the metaphor for business was the factory. And so you'd hear things like, we've got to break down the silos, let's outsource that, let's contract somebody in. All of the language that you're hearing was the language of the factory. But business owners don't grow businesses like that anymore, right? So the way they grow it is they go, I'm going to be world-class at these 3 or 4 things, and then I'm going to partner for something else. So an example might be, I've got this consulting business and I've got 20 staff, and I use CFO Centre or Deloitte from my outsourced CFO. I might use Ryan to run podcasts for me, which is a marketing and digital approach for me to build relationships and grow my profile. I might use Sprout to help me design my stages of growth and make sure I get my leadership and my values right, because staff is such a rare commodity and you invest so much in developing them and so on and so forth. So instead of having 3 or 4 or 5 roles inside the business that are non-income generating, you partner with those in the smartphone model, and you end up changing the dynamic, because it means that the 18 or 20 staff you've got, nearly all of them are income generating. Now, when you get bigger, you start internalizing that resource. So we were really clear about this idea of developing out these communities of experts in North Harbour, in Auckland, Wellington, and probably either Hamilton or Christchurch next year, that can sit inside the organisation. And what happens is they work together to help each other's clients. We sort of joke, we're BNI for grown-ups, and we do the job Rotary used to do, right? So
BNI for grown-ups.
Yeah. So it's and I've got to say, I've got a huge amount of respect for BNI. If I could make connected communities as big as BNI, I'd be wrapped. They've got a very specific model. It's totally replicable. It's global. It delivers lots of value to hyper local businesses. It's got a style that I struggle with a little bit, but the people in it don't, and they get a lot of value from it. So whereas we've got a particular style for our market. So to loop all the way back, we got a really deliberate idea in the culture. We've got a deliberate idea on who fits. We've got a deliberate idea on delivery. So, we joke about TED Talk. We joke about this idea of half of them got ADHD, half of them got dyslexia. So the workshops, the roundtables, and the speed meeting we run is all designed specifically for people who've got a million things going on in their mind at the moment, right? You can't do some corporate bullshit sage on the stage where everyone sits there and gets presented to for 5 hours, and then there's a panel and there's another presenter. I mean, our guys are all gone, that's corporate. So for our market, it's highly interactive. It's all about shifting perspective because our people already know business. And it's got to be fun. So, and I don't mean that in a facetious, light-hearted way, although, it is light-hearted. The fun piece is that it's a place for people to come to re-energize. Business can be hard. It can be great and it can be beautiful, but it can be hard. So we've deliberately created a space where people come in and they can get re-energize if they've had a tough month. So yes, that's sort of how we put it together.
Well, it makes sense. It's crazy how much value there is in unifying a shared humanity in a way. I was talking to the chairman of Family Business New Zealand, and they do like this forum thing. So they're not competitors; they're completely different niche.
They're not competitors at all. Yeah,
and they have a certain archetype of person in the family business. The son, say, or the daughter, and then they put them in a room, and their unique challenges are shared, and then they have a facilitator as a means to open up genuine conversations. But just the fact that there's someone that understands what it's like for you when the rest of the world doesn't. I see a lot of value in that. It's quite interesting. And how much of business is people's inability to do the cold outreach?
Yeah.
Like you think about recruitment, marketing. Like none of that needs to exist. I don't need to exist. All people need to do is ask the cunt to meet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just conscious, we've done 36 minutes, mate. That was a solid 10-minute explanation.
Yeah.
What has been I guess the outcome for someone like this isn't so much a sales pitch, but like what are people feeling when they have that opportunity for someone to understand them? Like what's the net gain that they talk about?
Yeah, look, that's a great question because it's actually multi-layered. So I get gratitude of people just saying, I just having such a tough month. I'm so glad I came. I'm feeling a lot better. So you've got the if you like the tangible number one. It's pretty rare for someone to come in our room and not continue growing and not end up finding the support they need to continue and grow through. And in fact, we're starting to see. I'm running a program called the Reconnecting Challenge at the moment, and it's really interesting. I put out a whole lot of messages to people who were involved several years ago, and they want to come back in now because they've solidified the business and they want the next piece of energy. So. So look, it's that camaraderie of being surrounded by people that have the same challenges which you talked about, which gives people a lot of peace of mind and comfort. It's the ability to get some understanding and meet some people that help them navigate growth and navigate growth quickly. It's also the ability to meet people who can help them unblock growth, because often you'll get to a point. I was talking to someone the other day. They'd sort of been they'd been stuck in that 14 to 17 million range. Their margins were starting to get squeezed. Been a difficult time with inflation and supply stuff, and they were just looking for a way to unblock that to get going into the next phase. And through some of the people I met in our room, they found 3 people they're working with now, and you can just see a complete shift in the energy of the business. When I went out to have a look at it the other day, they've been doing all sorts of really deep focus group stuff with clients and really shifting their perspective. So, that's what we talk about. We're a relationship environment. We're unashamedly commercial because we want to see people get those results to whatever level they want to. We've got a guy came in 3 years ago. His business has gone from 20 to 50 staff. I was chatting to him and he said, "No, I'm not getting any bigger, Ben. I've made that decision. 50 was my number. It works really well. The EBITDA is really strong. If I go past 50, I'm going to introduce a whole new level of complexity. It means I've got to get to 100 staff." He said, "I'm in my early 60s. I'm really happy with what I've got. I can leave a legacy with this business." So it allows those people to make those intentional choices. So it's multi-layered, really. It's, get the energy, get the relationships, get the business going, be confident when you actually got it to where you want it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like the people not thinking they need help, but you compare someone that's has a coach, has a support, has a network. Like the only time life has ever been hard is when I've self-isolated and think, "Oh, poor me, it's harder for me. People don't understand." And it's just like, fuck. But if you have a network of people that care and are on the same path, because I kind of like that. When I go home, I don't talk about where I don't want it because I'm obsessive. Like if I never want to, I don't really want to hang out with staff outside of work, ideally, because I'll just talk to them incessantly about work.
Yeah.
So I'm glad there's a break, but like I'm starting to see the appeal of a shared humanity, someone that understands, and just being able to like shoot the shit and understand how to improve things and how to make things better.
Yeah, or just understand you're not alone, right? You know, I like to say on this growth phase, you know, the path is well worn, but it's unique to each walker, and because most people growing businesses have never done it before, right? But there's been thousands of businesses that have gone ahead of you, and so a lot of the challenges can be spotted by the people, and it's a lot more fun to go on a tramp with other people and walk around by yourself for several years, right? So you know, having the company and having the guy, what I call the guys, makes a big difference. Yeah.
What about like I'm starting to hear more consistent systems at that phase. Are there like consistent processes that tend to be used, like EOS or something like that, or like that? What do people tend to gravitate to go from that 10 to 70? Does it change? Is it unique, or is there like 3 systems and people just pick one of the 3? Or
there's several layers, right? So one is, how do I actually operate my business? So EOS is a great system for privately held business, particularly when the owner's entrepreneur, who got to size where you actually need some sort of, I can't remember what they call it, implementer or something, but a chief operating officer, integrator that sort of keeps it going. And then you've got the pieces underneath. That's a great system. Some people use advisory boards. Advisory boards are as good as the people you put on them. Some people use, executive coaches who understand that phase of 20 to 75 and on. And there's some really good individuals out there that do that. So that's your governance and design level. And often they're also using someone like a Spring for market scope. So they're more like the architect, not the builder. If you think about it's these guys who are and women who are helping you structure your business and then run your advisory board and stuff are more like the builder. These people give you insight. Intrinsica, Michael Masterson and his team are very, very good around how do you identify and drive the value out of that 1% of your intangible assets at 90% of your value. Because for a lot of us, if you've got a services business or a lot of those businesses, there's nothing to drop on your toe, so that's, if you can drop it if you make it and you drop it on your toe, that's tangible. But for a lot of people, they aren't in that business. So where are the secret pieces that allow you to really drive the value? Who are the people who might want to buy off you because of that, or buy you because of that? So there's that piece. Then when you come down, you get into operationalizing the structure. You're into the the Sprouts and the Harrowfields or people like that. Recognition. Those people can help you actually figure out your layers of leadership, make sure everything's working right, do all that sort of stuff. So that's a people piece. And then the last piece is you've got to, you're going to be systematizing your business. You can't replicate at 40 or 50 or 60 staff without processes, which is how do we do things, systems, which is the IT. And more often than not these days, there's elements of offshoring labour and or use of AI. So that stuff has to be intentional as well. Otherwise, you just got everyone doing what they think's best and the wheels fall off.
It's crazy how much, like a year ago, it was gobbledygook to me, and I was like, what do you mean cash flow? Like that doesn't... Why wouldn't you have cash? And then you think about, you're going to get paid at that point, and then you got to fill this thing and that. And then I was like, well, what's the point of systems? You just hire people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But then you're like, oh, well, this person thinks this is what this value means, and this person thinks what this value means, and how do we make a consistent flow on that? And then also like corporates, you're like, oh, there's no humanity in that. Like they don't seem to care. Like, oh, well, they need that because of these things that happen. And what are the sort of, I guess, lessons that come from the challenges that unfold through that stages? Like, are there common things that often they find a hurdle? They're like, okay, now I got to get the leadership team, or I got no systems. Now I'm doing this, they're doing that, and it's inconsistent. Or what are the pain they go through that growth? Yeah,
look, you hear a lot of things out there. One is that firstly acknowledge you've got a problem, you got to fix it. The second is you can often go and get resource to help you do that, because building a system and operating a system are two different things. And sometimes finding someone who's done it a few times before can really speed it up. And so if you look at, if you're trying to redesign your sales system, for example, Nick Paul at Sales Factory is just fantastic at that. So you can go and get some help to get that processes right. Next thing is that we talked about it before, is when your business starts to grow and you start to formalize more, you're going to have some people who are with you when it was more informal who are not going to be comfortable and not want to do it, right? They're not going to fill the CRM in. They're not going to do this sort of stuff. And you've got to ask yourself your question about whether they're going to be able to fit what you're creating. And then the last piece is that generally, if you're an emerging growth business aiming to be a mid-market business and you really want to drive really good margin, you have to maintain two things, which is intimacy with your customer. You've got to be really close to your customer, and you've got to maintain an pace of innovation. You've got to be the best at responding to what their current needs are. And you think about how the world's changing so quickly at the moment. What you were talking about with corporate is they get so rigid that they just can't make the adjustments. And so the twin challenge of moving towards process is also maintaining innovation, maintaining experimentation, making sure you're close to your customer and you're hearing from your customer and you're not assuming, all those sort of things.
How do you we're almost finished, but how do you maintain innovation as is there examples of corporates that have sort of worked it out to some degree where they still have the community and they also have the innovation? How do you maintain that with such a regimented way of running your business?
Well, I think Amazon Web Services is probably the biggest in the world that seems to have a model. I don't understand it very well. I've had it explained to me. I'm just not that bright. But they actually have a failure score of some description. I'm not sure what they call it. And so if you smash your numbers but you don't hit your level of required failure, you don't make all your bonus. Because if you're not achieving failure and however they measure it, it means you're not iterating and innovating enough, which means that you're going to get knocked out. And so they have instituted at scale a failure score. Other ways to do it, I'm a huge fan of 90-day cycles, particularly when you get to scale. And you might use OKR, objectives, key results, or some system. And what that does is that while you've got an idea of where you want to get to in 3 years, and you've got a pretty good idea of where you want to get in a year, you're in 90 days, and you're going, okay, these are the 5 things Ryan should do, and these are the 5 things Ben's focusing on, and these are the 5 things that Mary's focusing on. And you actually get to say, well, that's not working. Let's stop it. Because what happens is you can institutionalize doing stuff that doesn't work really easily. So the 90-day cycle with an annual planning cycle allows you to check in and recalibrate and check in and recalibrate and check in and recalibrate. And that keep, stop, start process of, okay, well, we tried that, it didn't work. Okay, or we're going to try it for another 90 days, and then if it doesn't work, we're going to stop it then. And so it allows you to weed stuff out, because what happens with organizations is that if your capacity is taken up doing stuff that's shit, it doesn't work, then you don't have capacity to do the other good stuff. Yeah.
Well, I've learned to end things abruptly for retention, so thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
No worries.
Great to see you again.
You too.